and welcome to our very first edition of Tiki Talk. I am Toby Rich. I apologize, we're not actually in the Tiki Bar. It is not yet ready for this, but there are some things that are going on that I would like to discuss that I feel, especially in this time right now, is really important. Um, we're going to today talk about the 2020 presidential election, of course. Um, there's been so much uproar on both sides of the aisle on this. And there's a couple of things that I have come across that I would like to go over. Uh, Specifically, some of the information on the web. I think this one particular article that I'm going to start with is actually pretty important. Um, and it is fighting the election results and how Trump is now employing a new weapon. That weapon being the government itself. This is by Peter Baker and Lara Jakes of the New York Times, and this just out today. Um, President Donald Trump is facing the prospect of leaving the White House in defeat in just 70 days. And he is harnessing the power of the federal government to resist the results of an election that he lost, something that no sitting president has done in American history. And this is important to know. In the latest sign of defiance, the president's senior cabinet secretary has fueled concerns Tuesday that Trump would resist handing over power to President elect Joe Biden after legal challenges to the vote. There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration, and that is what was quoted by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Trump's attorney general has at the same time authorized investigations into supposed voter fraud. His General Services Administration has refused to give Biden's team access to transition offices and resources that are guaranteed to him under the law. And the White House is preparing a budget for next year as if though Trump will be around to present it. The president has also embarked on a shakeup of his administration. He fired the defense secretary, Mark Esper, as well as the heads of three other agencies while installing loyalists in key positions at the National Security Agency and the Pentagon. Allies expect more to come, including the possible dismissal of the directors of the FBI and the CIA. This just can't be good. The rest of the world, on the other hand, is increasingly moved to accept Biden's victory and is prepared to work with him despite Trump's refusal to acknowledge these results. Having spoken with journalists, Biden called the president's actions since Election Day an embarrassment and that it will not serve him well in the long run. The president-elect Biden quoted, "How can I say this tactfully? It will not help the president's legacy." This standoff has left the United States in a position of the kind of country whose weak democratic process it often criticizes, rather than congratulating Biden and inviting him to the White House, as his predecessors traditionally have done after an election changed party control. Trump instead has been marshaling his administration and pressuring his Republican allies into acting as if the outcome were still uncertain. Either out of faint hope of actually overturning these results or at least creating a narrative to explain this loss. The president's efforts to discredit with false claims both the election results and the incoming Biden administration is in many ways the culmination of 4 years of stocking the government with pliant appointees while undermining the credibility of other institutions in American life. This includes intelligence agencies, law enforcement authorities, news media, technology companies, the federal government more broadly, and now election officials in states across 4 time zones. Uh, Through his presidency, Trump has tried to condition much of the American public not to believe anyone other than him, with evident success. Although the evidence shows there was no widespread conspiracy to steal the election in multiple states that Trump has invented, at least one poll showed that many supporters actually accept his claims. Okay, what's wrong with you people? 70% of these Republicans that were surveyed by Political and Morning Consult said they did not believe the election was free and fair. Let that sink in for a minute. What we have seen in the last week from the president more closely resembles the tactics of the kind of authoritarian leaders we follow. That was quoted by Michael Abramowitz. He's the president of Freedom House, which is a non-profit organization that tracks democracy around the world. He was also quoted saying, "I never would have imagined seeing something like this in America." Abramowitz doubted there was much danger of Trump overturning the election, but again stated, by convincing a large part of the population that there was widespread fraud, he is seeding a myth that could endure for years and contribute to an erosion of public confidence in our electoral system. Biden has proceeded without waiting for Trump's concession and spoke on Tuesday with the leaders of Britain and France, Germany, and Ireland. Most major world leaders have congratulated him on his victory, including close Trump allies like Prince Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, who is another Trump favorite. They all joined in the chorus on Tuesday. The only major holdout so far has been President Vladimir Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping of China. Biden has said that he was not overly concerned with the Trump administration's refusal to provide transition money or offices and access to agencies, and has been insisting he could assemble a government on his own by the January 20th inauguration. President-elect quoted, "We're going to be moving along in a consistent manner and putting together our administration for the White House. Nothing is going to stop us." Biden did agree that it would be helpful to have access to classified information like the presidential daily briefing, which is something an outgoing administration usually provides an incoming president. But he also added, "The fact that they are not willing to acknowledge that we won at this point is not much consequence to our planning." In a testy exchange with journalists at the State Department, Pompeo insisted that American efforts to prevent voter intimidation and ensure free and fair elections around the world were not diminished by Trump's refusal to concede. "We must count every legal vote," Pompeo said, adopting the president's language. "We must make sure that any vote that isn't lawful ought to not be counted. That dilutes your vote if it's not done properly." He snapped when asked if Trump's delaying tactics undermined the State Department's efforts to pressure political leaders abroad to accept the losing results. That's ridiculous, and you know it's ridiculous, and you asked it because it's ridiculous. That is Pompeo's quote. Pompeo can often be sarcastic, particularly when he's speaking to reporters, but the State Department made no effort to clarify if he was joking. Asked later on Fox News if he was serious, he did not say. All he said was, "We will have a smooth transition, and we will see what the people ultimately decide when all the votes have been cast." Well, the votes have all been cast, Mr. Pompeo. Now we're just finishing the count. These comments did bring about backlash from career diplomats, including criticism of his glib tone and outright concerns that the Trump administration would try to steal the election. Trump congratulated him later on Twitter by tweeting, "That's why Mike was number one in his class at West Point." This delay in acknowledging the results has left American embassies in limbo. At least some embassy officials have been told to steer clear of any efforts to help Biden with foreign leaders who want to congratulate him, as they normally would during a transition. Diplomats said that they could not even begin enumerating the successes of the Trump administration for fear of describing it in the past tense. Some ambassadors sought to straddle the line of neutrality, even as they pointedly did not recognize Biden as the victor. It's been a hard-fought race that has shown us the American spirit of both grit and resilience, and that is quoted by Robert Woody Johnson, who's the ambassador to Britain. He also tweeted, "Nothing in the history of America is worth achieving if it has come easy." Other envoys have echoed the president's allegations of voter fraud. "Please don't disenfranchise me and my fellow voters in order to win at all costs." And that came from Carla Sands, who's the ambassador to Denmark, on her personal Twitter page. And by way of evidence, she posted a screenshot of a State Department website that could not track her absentee ballot. Interesting. Secretary Pompeo shouldn't play along with the baseless and dangerous attacks on the legitimacy of last week's election. And that came from Representative Elliot Engel, Democrat, New York. The chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee stated, "The State Department should now begin preparing for President-elect Biden's transition." In extending his purge of the Pentagon on Tuesday, Trump replaced 3 more policy officials with loyalists. Some Defense Department officials worried that the replacements would be more amenable to striking American adversaries than their predecessors were. James Anderson, the acting Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, who was at odds with the White House, stepped down and was effectively replaced by Anthony Tata, who became the senior official performing the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. And that is how the announcement actually put it. Tata, who is a retired Army one-star general who has called Islam the most oppressive, violent religion, and referred to former President Barack Obama as a terrorist leader, actually withdrew from consideration for the top Pentagon policy job in August. That was amid opposition from both Republican and Democratic senators. The president also installed Kashyap Patel, a former aide to Representative Devin Nunes, Republican California, who played a key role in helping Republicans try to undermine the Russian investigation, as chief of staff to new acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller, which is adding alarm at the Pentagon over moves to stock the department leadership with loyalists. Let that sink in a little bit. Trump's allies and the president was justified in fighting the election results even if he was not successful, citing that they deem illegitimate court decisions expanding mail-in voting. In light of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's unconstitutional de facto legislation enacted through its rulings, along with the coming 2022 U.S. Senate and governor races, the Trump campaign's litigation is essential for Republicans to have a fair playing field in the long term, no matter the short-term result. And that came from Sam Newberg, who is an advisor to Trump's 2016 campaign, via email. Only 9 sitting presidents before Trump lost bids for another term in a general election. A few others were not renominated by their party. Those include John Adams and John Quincy Adams, and they were sour enough to skip their successors' inaugurations, but none resisted leaving office or made claims of widespread conspiracy to try to reverse the outcome of an election. We have not seen any president in history lose re-election, refuse to concede defeat, and take actions that threaten the abuse of presidential power to keep himself in office. And that was quoted by Michael Beschloss, who is a prominent presidential historian. He also quoted, "Here, Donald Trump is yet again in a historical category of his own, and this time it is ominous for democracy." Richard Norton Smith, who wrote a biography of Herbert Hoover and is writing one on Gerald Ford, 2 of the 9 recalled Hoover's anger at the man who beat him, which was Franklin Roosevelt, and their frosty car ride to the inauguration in March of 1933. And he quoted, "But the point here is Hoover, however embittered he was over FDR's unwillingness to cooperate, as he defined the term, shared the same car, just as he had welcomed the Roosevelts for the ritualistic pre-inaugural tea the night before." He goes on to say they might despise one another, but their personal animosity was outweighed by their commitment to the democratic process. The parallel often cited is when President Al Gore pushed for recounts in Florida in 2000 to overcome a slim lead by his Republican opponent, George W. Bush of Texas. But Gore was not the incumbent, and President Bill Clinton did not direct the administration to intervene, although it did withhold transition resources from Bush until their fight was resolved. And this just goes on and on and on. There's more problems afoot here. It's gotten ridiculous. These claims of fraud. And this article is going to kind of break it down for you as to why it is a morphing coup that's morphing into a grift and or a power grab, one might say. This is by this is from an article that originally appeared on a site called Salon.com. That Donald Trump's attempted coup started as a clown show. Over the weekend, as Joe Biden was declared the winner by the mainstream media, and then also by the entire world, it has morphed into an outright grift. In a hilariously weird press conference outside a Philadelphia landscaping company on Saturday, Rudy Giuliani and other Trump flunkies, and this is important to note, and we will touch on this right after, one of the people in attendance to this press conference was a registered sex offender. But they pushed the idea that they could somehow invalidate Biden's robust electoral victory. On Twitter, Trump continued to hype the utterly false notion that there's some pathway to invalidating open and counted ballots in various states he has clearly lost, and somehow reverse the elections, or reverse the results of these elections in the courts. Trump was backed up as usual by his corrupt administration. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany held a press conference and lied so boldly about the possibility of invalidating votes that even Fox News was forced to cut away and offer a fact check to viewers. The Attorney General Bill Barr, in a move to validate Trump's evidence-free claims of voter fraud, told federal prosecutors that they were free to open investigations into these baseless allegations. And the usual opportunistic people in the Senate, including Senator Ted Cruz of Texas and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, they're all over right-wing media trying to hype Trump's election lies. Trump's attempted coup, to be clear, it really has zero chance of working. His election lawsuits are pathetic, and they keep getting thrown out, and they're even being thrown out by Republican judges. All the whining about illegal voters, which is mostly code for voters whose skin color or political leanings are not to Trump's taste, it all amounts to nothing.
since the votes he's complaining about are already open and counted. At this point, the main purpose of all the false promises that the courts will invalidate the election appears to be money. It's always about money. Um, and it's sad. If you look at the fine print in the solicitations for Trump's legal defense fund, it makes clear that the money will mostly be used to pay down his campaign debts. Since Election Day, more than 130 such emails begging for cash have gone out to Republican voters. Considering that a practiced con artist that Trump is, he's probably already working out how to leverage his fake victim status to squeeze these hapless supporters for more cash down the road. The problem is, unfortunately, that state Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has decided to actually back Trump's play. And this is something that was predicted over a year and a half ago. In a repulsive speech in the Senate on Monday, McConnell avoided actively endorsing Trump's false allegations of fraud, but still put a gloss of legitimacy on the president's fiction by saying that no states have yet certified their election results. And this is something that doesn't happen until December in any event, and that Trump is 100% within his rights to pursue these bogus allegations that the election was rigged. Both claims are meant to sound reasonable, but are in fact deeply dangerous. And here's why. For one thing, McConnell implied there could be something shady about the presidential election, but he did affirm the legitimacy of down ballot elections where Republicans did better than expected. So the problem is these are literally on the same ballots. How can the same ballot be legitimate if one comes to a congressional or Senate race and then illegitimate or fake regarding the presidential race? So in layman's terms, basically what it is that they're saying that the election for the congressional Senate race, that people elected mainly Republicans to resume in the Senate, and they're saying that those votes were legitimate. But on that same ballot, on the same piece of paper, the votes for the president, they're saying are not valid. They're not legitimate. So you can't have it both ways. You can't accept the vote on a piece of paper and say, yes, okay, we're good with this, but we're not good with the upper half of this piece of paper, and try to delegitimize the election in that accord. That's the simplest way, I guess, I can explain it. In the same Mitch style logic under which confirming a Supreme Court justice is nominated by a Democratic president 9 months, this was done before the next election, and it was considered unacceptable. Here comes your double standard. But confirming a justice just days before the next election is totally fine. And it's all because it's coming from a Republican president who nominated that person. But to put it more bluntly, it's just bad faith. Secondly, while Trump may technically have the right to file frivolous legal actions, the real question here is whether he has the right to deliberately undermine the clear verdict of the American electorate with a pack of ludicrous lies. McConnell is using this rules lawyering to avoid the real question, which is why he and other Republicans are refusing to stand up for the integrity of our democracy. And that's absolutely correct. There are some people, God help us, there are some people like Never Trumper journalist Bill Kristol, who has theorized that McConnell and other Republicans are backing Trump's coup efforts not because they think Trump will actually succeed, but instead to just humor the president's injured ego. It's ridiculous. while it's highly unlikely, McConnell has barely hidden his contempt for Trump even from the very beginning and openly treats the president as a man child to be exploited and discarded the second he's no longer useful. It's highly doubtful he cares one bit about coddling Trump's hurt feelings. No, the real reason McConnell is doing this is simple. He does not believe in democracy. And I agree with that. I have to say that he really doesn't. He doesn't believe in a true democracy, and neither does current President Trump. They only believe in a democracy of their making, and that I'm sorry, that's not a democracy. Um, but where McConnell is concerned, this is also why he has spent his entire stint as majority leader, first refusing to seat Barack Obama's nominees to federal courts, and then the second Trump was in office, he started stuffing the bench at lightning speed. McConnell sees the courts as a way for Republicans to stage an end run around democracy because judges can strike down democratically passed laws with no accountability to voters. And this should be something that should have been a concern of everybody when they were confirming this latest justice, Supreme Court justice, is that, again, these Supreme Court judges do not have to abide by democratically passed laws. They have no accountability to voters. These are life-term appointments. There is no getting fired. I mean, you really have to do something completely horrific and off the wall to be removed from the Supreme Court. It's, to my understanding and my knowledge, it's never happened. But in a rare instance, it probably could be done. But back to the basics here. McConnell's unwillingness to recognize duly elected Democratic leaders as legitimate, this only appears to have hardened. And that's why he's treating Trump's efforts to invalidate this election as an opportunity. It's not that he thinks that Trump's clownish power grab will actually succeed, although McConnell would certainly be delighted if it did. It's that McConnell sees Trump's false accusations of fraud as a pretext he can use to undercut Biden even before he takes office, and in all likelihood to refuse to acknowledge Biden as a legitimate president once he does. McConnell's main goal with Biden is as it was with Obama, and that's to make a Democratic presidency look like a failure. That means not just blocking major legislation, but also judicial nominations and quite possibly cabinet appointments as well. Trump's fraud accusations won't even come close to allowing him to remain in office, but they sure do make a lovely excuse for McConnell to ruin Biden's ability to govern. But not all is lost. McConnell is taking a big gamble. His increasingly open contempt for democracy could very well backfire on him. In Georgia, which Biden has apparently won this year, he has not won but 2 Senate runoff elections in January. This could determine who holds the majority in the congressional Senate. Republicans are clearly worried about losing those races, as evidenced by Governor Brian Kemp's warnings that he will escalate the state voter suppression. It's certainly conceivable that Georgia voters are angered by McConnell's efforts to undercut the president-elect they voted for and will punish him at the polls by taking away his Senate majority. In the meantime, however, McConnell's actions should not be downplayed or misunderstood. He's not in this to coddle Trump's feelings or to spout pointless hot air. He almost certainly doesn't think Trump's coup attempt will succeed, but is eyeballing a soft coup of his own, one in which he kneecaps Biden's presidency well before, again, Biden even takes the oath of office. As Salon Andrew O'Hare wrote on Monday from Salon.com. While Biden's win was a relief, it cannot resolve the crisis of democracy. McConnell's power play here is exhibit number one. Trump may be on his way out, but McConnell's war on democracy is both more clever and more subtle than anything Trump has ever tried. Because of this soft coup, it is far more likely that it will be successful. Our best hope is that enough voters wake up and realize that democracy isn't safe until the entire Republican Party is disempowered, not just the orange reality TV host that's currently at the head of it. And the sad part here that I have to agree with is that, okay, let me explain this. How do I explain? I'm a Republican, but I'm not one of these super far right-wing Republican that I consider the evangelical super far right-wing Christian Republicans. And these are the people that demand that you live your life according to what they say, and they follow the Christian workings of the Bible, but only the parts that suit them for that particular point in time in that moment. They claim that they don't like things according to their core Christian values, but yet their contempt for anybody that goes against their core Christian values is in itself against their core Christian values, if that makes any sense to you. I also don't agree with a lot of the far left, that's so super far left that they don't know if they're going to scratch their watch or wind their butt, because they also have their own super core values of socialism and everything for everyone and trophies for everybody just because they participated. I don't agree with that. I believe that we have become a nanny state that we are in. It used to be that if you competed in something and you lost, then that is what empowered you to work harder and do better to compete the next time to try to win. Not everybody can be a winner, and not everybody should get a trophy just for participating. And because of that, we lose that little something in ourselves of, I don't have to actually try hard, I just have to show up, and I'll be rewarded for that. This is where things have gone downhill in today's workforce, is we have lost the core value of earning a hard-earned dollar. You don't go to work anymore, and you're not all in for the job that you're doing. You're going and you're collecting a paycheck, and you just don't really care about the job that you're doing. You don't care about the company that you're doing the job for. And at the same time, in a case like that, it does work both ways, because there used to be a point in time where companies truly cared about their employees. If something happened to an employee, the company would rally around. All the coworkers, everybody would pitch in to rally around an employee that was in trouble or hurt or maybe lost their home in a fire. These things don't happen anymore with most companies. I can't say all, but with most big corporations, you are just a number. You are just a faceless, clock in, clock out piece of paper that collects a paycheck. And when your employees are treated that way, then why are they going to really go above and beyond for you? To really try and make a difference in what they're doing. This, I feel, is where society has failed. Somewhere in the last 15, 20 years, and I hate using some of these generic terms, but with these millennials, this is where I feel that it's not so much the fault of a millennial for their way of thinking, but somewhere along the line, some soccer mom Karen came along and said, that's not right, that child lost that game, and they should be rewarded just because they showed up. I can't agree with that. Um, it's like going ahead and giving the kid a piece of candy for having their tantrum, because one, it'll make them quiet. Two, it will quell and calm them because they got their way. And then to turn around and and say, well, if you had given them their way to begin with, be it right or wrong, they wouldn't have had that tantrum. If you understand what I'm trying to tell you here, but that has become our society's way of thinking. Is damned if you do, damned if you don't anymore. And with that, I fall somewhere kind of in the middle. And I'm not a liberal. I'm not a libtard. I lean more Republican than I do anything else, because I agree with work hard for what you have. You should not expect things to be handed to you, or given a trophy just because you showed up. I believe that you should earn what you have. And I feel that things like respect are something that are earned. It's not something that you're just given. Um, but I have so many beliefs on this, that I could go on and on and on and on and explain my position on things. But I am what I would consider a normal thinking Republican. These right wing, super right wing Republicans, and I have met a few, and I have pointed out to them, here is a video clip of President Trump saying that he is going to cut entitlement programs to pay for these big tax breaks. And these people come back and say he did not say that. And I show them the video clip where he clearly said it. They have seen it with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears, and they still turn around and tell you, you can't believe what fake media and fake news is telling you. And then I try to explain, this is not fake media and fake news. He is clearly saying this all on his own. This isn't an interpretation from CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News. These aren't interpretations. This is him saying these things himself. And no matter what, these super, I call them Trump thumpers, these super far right-wing evangelical Christian far-right followers of Trump thumpers. It doesn't matter what you show them. It doesn't matter what they see. They just deny, and live in some kind of warped sense of reality that Trump has created for them. Somebody had asked me to, put up or shut up where Trump was concerned, 6 months into his presidency. And I had actually posted, when Trump was first elected president 4 years ago, I actually went and posted 4 years ago, and I said, and if you bear with me while we wait for this to pull this up, it actually popped up in my in my memories today, that I said basically this. Oh, and here it is. All right. So I can read you, quote, unquote, what I wrote 4 years ago on this day, November 11th, 2016. I keep seeing all these articles being posted about mass protesting and violence and threats that are being made against the president-elect. And this is when Trump was voted into office. This I am not happy about at all. While I have voiced what are my own concerns and fears, I do not condone violence in any shape or form. Trump is the president-elect, no matter who you supported, and that position that he now holds should be given the due and utmost respect that would be given to anyone that is our commander-in-chief. It is normal to be concerned. Nobody knows for sure exactly what is going to take place, but violence, in my opinion, is not an acceptable course of action. I am very disappointed in all of those who have decided to use violence and are destroying our great cities across this land. This is not what America represents. This is not how true Americans should act, and shame on you. So in the very beginning, I I didn't like Trump. I didn't care for Trump before Trump even decided to run for office. But I supported and respected his position as our commander in chief. 6 months into that, not so much. Um, I had my reasons. He has committed blatant fraud. Uh, it's always the first thing that I bring up when somebody says, prove to me that Trump has committed fraud. Trump University in itself was fraudulent and left these students with an incurred debt that they couldn't get out of. But they also had nothing to show for their efforts. There was no accreditation for Trump University. Um, None of what they earned could be carried over to a legitimate school. So they basically lost out completely. And Trump just said, too bad. That is your president of the United States. Um, this is the same president who stole from his own charity in New York. And if you look back at when that happened and when he got caught doing that, it was the same time that he made the announcement that he was no longer going to be a New Yorker. He was now going to be a resident of the state of Florida. And his resort, Mar-a-Lago, was going to become his new home. It seemed awful convenient that right after he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, he fled the state of New York, in part because the state of New York has said he will never be allowed to open or run any form of charity in this state again. But also with the fact of the amount of legal litigation that's going on, the investigations that are going on into his taxes alone. And there have been so many, there's been so much ping pong on this, and people claiming that he prepaid his taxes, that he paid hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes because he prepaid them. Okay. When was the last time you ever prepaid your taxes on the income that you might be getting? Over the past 10 years, Trump has paid zero. It's ridiculous. And it's all been granted. Maybe it was legal for him to pay zero because he managed to go through these loopholes and jump through hoops that allowed him to claim and pay $0. But to me, if you're going to claim that you love this country, that you are the true patriot, the true American, and that you are all about America, then aren't you going to also pay your fair share to support the country that you love oh so much and are now fighting to stay in charge of? I don't buy it. I don't think anybody with a legitimate brain cell left in their head could come up with a real reason that's not from some super far right-wing website that are, again, claiming more lies and whatnot. Right now in Washington, the nightmare that's going on there is the people that are currently working, even down to secretaries, they're being told it is business as usual. And Washington is a very small place. And if you even so much as try right now to look for another job because you feel that Trump is not going to be able to do a role reversal on these election results, not only are you going to be fired on the spot, you won't be able to find another job in Washington, period, ever again. Your career doing even so much as filing folders away is over. And they will see to it that this legitimately happens to these people. This is not how you run an office. This is not how you run a country. This is not how you take care of one another. It's just very sad to me that this is what it has all come down to at this point. Uh, I'm I don't want this to run too awful long, but there are a couple of things also that I wanted to go through with you guys. Um, and if you're on my Facebook, then you have already seen this. But I wanted to reiterate it because it really is. It says a lot in more layman terms than anything else, especially for people that just don't get it. Um, and I had it and I lost it. Bear with me. Okay, here it is. Um, somebody had asked me a question, and he's a friend of mine. He is also one of these. I think he's borderline far right wing, and in the thing that also I have to reiterate, you can be super far right wing. You could be so right wing that you are one of these evangelical Christians. I'm not going to denounce you. I'm not going to dislike you. Um, just like anything else, don't push your beliefs on everybody else and expect them to kind of fall in line just because you say so. Um, that's not how it works. Um, and this is a little long, um, but I ask you to bear with me because the point is very simple. Um, First of all, as a whole, the every single person watching this, every single person in this country as a whole, including you, President Trump, you need to calm down. Everybody needs to calm down. Um, Keep in mind, I'm a Republican. Yes, I voted for Biden. For me, he was the lesser of the two evils at this point. But to go forward, sorry, I've got my fur baby that's trying to come in. Thus, why I really wanted to do this out in the Tiki bar, but we can't. But I digress. Biden for me is the lesser of two evils, and the far right wing is feeding you nonsense, and even Fox News is saying it now that it's all nonsense that the far right wing is feeding to each and every American. There were, in fact, both parties present for the counting of the ballots, so I'm going to touch on this now. And it is well known and well established that the Democrats were the ones that were doing the mail-in ballots. They were the ones that did the majority. 100 times over, they did the majority of mail-in voting, more so than the Republicans. The Republicans were, or even early voting. The Republicans are the ones that showed up on election day overall more so than Democrats. Okay, so that's the first thing to understand. And again, this is common sense. The whole point of this claim of not wanting Trump's people present for the count of these ballots was for two reasons. One, because of the guidelines that are still in place for COVID-19, and it's safe to say that every single person from Trump's campaign or Trump's even, the West Wing of the White House, they are super spreaders of COVID-19. And this is known to be true, in fact, as it still currently is spreading all through the West Wing of the White House. Because Trump's people refuse to believe that the coronavirus is real and they refuse to follow guidelines and science, they have been spreading it through the White House and everywhere else that they have been. They have not been told that they can't be there to witness the count. What they have been told is that if they choose to do so, they are going to adhere to the safe distancing rules according to the Center for Disease Control guidelines. But these radical Republicans. They want their hands in that ballot. They want it in that ballot box so that they can try to do a fast swipe. that's not acceptable. The people that are monitoring these ballot counts are Republicans and Democrats. So it's not just what you're being fed by the super right wing, that it's Democrats that are going one for Biden, none for Trump. One for Biden, none for Trump. That's not how it's working over there. You have Republicans and Democrats, a check and a balance, that are watching this process play out. Um, the other reason is because Trump's people were trying to intimidate people that were doing the count. And okay, and I don't care if you're a far right wing person, and right now you're probably ready to just bash my face in with a baseball bat, and that's fine. That's totally, you're totally okay to think that way if you want to. Just please don't act on it. I have a tendency to bleed. So the thing that nobody seems to understand with this is that nowhere did you see radical Democrats getting in souped up pickup trucks or in their Duramax diesels and attacking people with Trump signs in their front yards or Trump signs on their vehicles. You didn't see Democrats trying to intimidate anybody. That's because they don't need to. It's generally not in a Democrat's nature to attack. But these super right wing pee on my leg and tell me it's raining people, they are getting in their big diesel pickup trucks and they are running around intimidating voters. They've been intimidating people for not living life and for having signs in their yards that say Biden, doing horrible things to Democrats. Um, yeah, I had a message. Sorry. It's been primarily Trump followers, the super Trumpers that have intimidated people at the polls, that have intimidated people throughout this election. If they saw a Biden sign, they would stop in the middle of traffic and get out of their vehicles with baseball bats and threaten people because they don't think how these guys think. And again, these are the type of people that Trump could pee on their leg and tell them that it's raining, and they would stick their hands out and go, "Oh my goodness, it is." That is how these people work. So I could see them saying we don't want these people from Trump's campaign in here while we're doing this count because we're not going to be intimidated while we do what is needed to be done and follow a democratic process that has been being followed without fail for hundreds of years. Those are your two reasons. Excuse me. When you think about this, in contrary to popular conspiracy theories, all counts were overseen by both Democrat and Republican representatives, and that is true. No matter what the far right media is telling you, this is fact. This is a factual statement, and it has been a factual standard for years, especially for the counting of absentee ballots. There have been mail-in ballots available for years. It's just been more so in the spotlight because it's been the major protocol for Democrats due to COVID-19 and their fear of catching this horrible airborne disease. The thing is you're saying, well, why is it that that the Democrats were more likely to mail in than Republicans were, where the Republicans showed up to vote on November 3rd? Well, here's the reason why. Democrats have more of a tendency to believe in science, where the Republicans don't. At least The super Trumpers do not believe in science. They believe in the almighty Donald Trump. That is where your problem lies with this. But that is why the more mail-in votes were done by Democrats. That is why after the polls closed and the numbers kind of favored Trump, but then slowly crept up in favor of Biden, that happened because they were counting legitimate mail-in ballots. It was the Republicans that told them and fought them tooth and nail to begin with and said early and or mail-in votes will not be counted before November 3rd's election. They refused to allow that to happen. So in consequence, they have to be counted afterwards. And that is why the numbers tipped the way that they did. It wasn't that just numbers out of a magic hat. The numbers went up as the Democrats' votes were finally being counted. So, with that said, there have, I believe at this point that the American people have spoken. It is time for a change, whether you love Trump or not. It is time for a change. This country has been far too long divided. And whether this change turns out to be good or bad will remain to be seen. You have to look around closely. And what you will see is something that you didn't see 4 years ago. You didn't see it 8 years ago, not 12 years ago. And what you see is in the past 3.5 years, this one man has single-handedly divided this country so badly. And somehow he has made these people think that anybody who doesn't agree with his own point of view is wrong, that these people are evil, that his way is the only way, and that no other opinion, way of life, nothing matters other than his. And if you don't toe the line according to what Trump wants, then you will be punished. This is exactly why people came to America from Europe to begin with. It was for freedom, freedom from persecution for their beliefs, mainly religious beliefs at that time, but that was the whole point of coming here and not being under a king or queen's, rule and an iron hand and telling you that what you believe is wrong. But this is what Trump has done for 3.5 years. This is what the super far right-wing Republicans do all the time. Our way is the only way. And that just can't be. That goes against what this country is about. But this one man has had people ganging up on anybody that doesn't see things his way. And that is not, again, what America is about. He has people believing that somebody with different ideas or ways of life doesn't matter in any way, shape, or form. I also feel that had this election gone the other way, just as I had posted a copy of Trump's speech from 2016, where he had said that he would accept the results of that election only if he won. It was the only way he would accept those results. This, again, should give you some kind of clue in itself, the kind of person that you are dealing with to begin with. There would have never been a single claim of fraud. And instead, it has only been because Trump didn't get his way. Trump has never accepted no for an answer. He is used to getting his way no matter what. Again, and I want to make this perfectly clear to everybody, I'm not a fan of Biden. I am, after all, a Republican. However, for the past 3 years, I cannot condone or support the actions of Trump, how he has treated his staff, how he has treated the American people, and especially his response to COVID-19. When you were elected to the highest office of this country, you were elected to serve the American people, not just the Republicans and not just the Democrats, but all the people of this country. Trump has made it a point at every turn that he would not support any state that didn't vote for him. He has stated on many occasions during this election that he is taking names of any state that didn't vote in his favor. What president in the history of this country has ever flat out threatened the American people. That's not how the President of the United States is supposed to work or act. Wake up. Um, at the end of the day, you show me a politician in Washington that isn't power hungry or that isn't corrupt in some way, shape, or form. And when you do that, then I will personally do your laundry, washed, ironed, folded, and put away, free of charge for life. And anybody that knows me knows that the one thing I detest more on this planet is doing laundry. I hate it. Here's the problem that I have with all of this. The far right, including Trump, is spewing bold-faced lies, and his followers are eating it up because, as we all know, it's easier to believe something negative about people. And it's easier to believe something negative about what is going on. I didn't like the man before he ran for president. I detest him even more now for the things that he has done while he's been in office. I implore you to please open your eyes and for a minute think for yourself. Do not follow what any of the mainstream media tells you. Not Fox, not MSNBC, not CNN, none of it. But instead, look at the entire picture as a whole and not conspiracy theories that one side or the other is telling you to be true. Take a minute to formulate some sort of conclusion with all the information that is available to you, not just what the far right or the far left are claiming. I don't say these things to upset, irritate, or anger you, for you are all my friends. But I want to try to get you to instead see and understand all of it, instead of only one side, and then take of what only one particular side wants you to believe. That's not how you should operate. It is time, in fact, for all of us to come together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, but as Americans, as friends, as neighbors, as family, loved ones. I would like to honestly say that no matter who won, we have a lot of work to do. We are still in the midst of a pandemic, one of which still has me personally out of work. That along with so many others that are also out of work, and there's no likelihood of any gainful recovery for some of us in sight. We need to get back to being there for each other instead of taking sides on a government that doesn't know what your name is or who you even are. And honestly, a government that could care less about where your next meal is coming from. I could go on and on, but I hope as you've read this or are now hearing this from me, that you take a minute to comprehend all of what's going on in the world around you and to understand what's really happening and what the big picture of it all and what it all is going to mean as it plays out. I'm going to leave you with this thought, and that is a simple quote. Love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. Be it Democrat, be it Republican, be gay, straight, black, red, white, blue, brown, purple, whatever. Love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. And if we all practice that, then the world would be a much better place to live in. I leave you with that thought. And I thank you for tuning in, and I thank you for tolerating a very long first episode of Tiki Talk. I have not yet decided if this is going to be a once-a-month thing, if I'm going to do this weekly. I might get bored and do this daily. I don't know yet. But hopefully, as time moves forward and as our winter weather is starting to settle in, we can get things straightened out and actually have Tiki Talk in the Tiki Bar where it should be. In time, we will have guests to debate certain issues and certain things. I'm hoping to even have the occasional musical guest come in, maybe sing a song or two for you. There really is no limit on what this program is going to be, and there's no specific thing that this program is going to be about. It's going to be about whatever pops into my head from week to week or month to month. Next week, it could be sheer laundry detergent that's got a bug up my butt. We just don't know. But until then, I wish you all a safe haven. Be kind to one another. Godspeed and good night.